Alright, let's do this. Hello there everybody, welcome back for another week of Wargames tutorial Thursday with your host, your favorite Finn, TMS. This is the weekly unofficial news and community wargame of Interstellar Marines, happening every Thursday and all that jazz. Ooh, look at that, Carl has been busy for last month. Yeah. I forgot to turn off the lights, so while the elevator is going back up, back. Much better now that I don't have to stare all the dust at my screen. Only the dust that is being projected in game. Now, into the meat of it. Just gonna unblock the mouse to make it wireless. There we go. So, what news could we have for this week? Well, unfortunately, we don't have any. The quote-unquote radio silence is still going on. However, I have planned for this week to instead of a rant that I do every week or so, for this week I decided something different. More so, I have a theory of what's going on right now. You know, we don't know. With all this radio silence and no responses, we really have nothing to work with. However, okay, that's an interesting bug. They seem to be there, but they are quote-unquote too far. So, I have a sort of a theory what might be going on. All we can really do is speculate. So anything that I say should be taken with extreme grain of salt. None of it is a fact. It is all pure speculation. Now, to get started, what is going on with Interstellar Marines, or rather, what's going on with Kim? That is what this theory crafting or whatever is gonna be focusing on. Why there is all this silence? Why there isn't anything? And the way I see it, I think right now we are having a sort of a crisis. We have had it for a while with Interstellar Marines. Like, I'm talking like post up to 27 crisis. And I think what's happening currently right now with Kim is that he is burdened with an enormous decision, what he should do with Interstellar Marines. Yeah, I think, how would I put it? I had this in my mind decently well thought out earlier, but I'm just gonna ramble on about the things as I play the game. So, why would there be, anything to, have a crisis about? Well, I think it has mainly to do with the fact that there are no more, like, the game is not making any money to keep on itself up floating. The servers are constantly in cost and all that. Basically, there is no revenue being made, and Kim is unable to keep working as a game full time. As a matter of fact, I think more and more he has to focus on the other job in order to keep the servers flowing and all that jazz. And we know before he had his relatives gave him money for like 6 months, and more or less, I think it's safe to say there's nothing left anymore. And he had really high hopes for the volunteers. I'm not saying that the volunteers haven't done anything, or they aren't doing anything. Again, remember, this is just speculations. However, I think what has happened is that he expected too much from the volunteers. He would want more, but he can't really ask for more. if that makes any sense. Because they are volunteers, they are working voluntarily. Like, there's only so much they can do, so in a way, he's probably disappointed of what has happened. At the same time, yeah, he expected more, basically. And with the whole running out of money and the servers costing, I think what's going on, he's figuring out whatever he, like, how to best the game going, or possibly even, well, I don't think he is debating whether he should throw in the towel, but I'm sure it sometimes does pop into his head. For sure. That's unavoidable. Like, he can't... No matter how dedicated he is, even he has doubts every now and then. Because that's what we are, human. We have doubts. So, what I think is going on is right now, it is sort of a... Well, the whole giving up is always somewhere at the back of a head. It's just a possibility, but it's not something that he's actually debating on. Rather, he's debating whatever, how to get on with the game. Like, I'd say there's a decision to be made whether the servers should be still kept going up and running. But that would for sure be more or less a sign of doom for the game, because how the game is going to be relevant with no servers up and running and next to no offline content. As a matter of fact, I think you can't play Interstellar Marines without being connected online. I could be wrong, but it had something to do with the Steam account connection. Don't quote on me that. So, whatever the servers should be kept running. Or not. That would be one way to focus on the game development. And, well, putting the resources, the few that there are, saving them for the actual development. And that's my theory of why it's such a hot pickle right now. Because there's going to be outrage if the servers are shut down, despite the fact that no one really plays the game. Which is why it's also this thinking going on. Not to mention, if the servers are shut down, then that will give a voice and a realistic argument for all the naysayers, saying that the game is dead. Well, the servers just shut down, you know. If somebody comes in and asks, is this game worth it or anything? Like, and the first thing they're gonna get is that, well, the servers are shut down, so there's no argument there. Like, that's enough for the new player to, you know, like, alright, just gonna skip it. Now, it should be noted that there is a potential customer base for this game, but, like, it's not at the state, like, the buyers are there, it's just the game is not. And the problem is the money from those would be needed right now, not after everything's done. And that's, again, bringing the whole stuff, like, yeah, we know that there are, like, we're not scratching even the surface of people who would potentially buy the game, but, like, yeah, the money is needed now, not then. Well, to be fair, it's gonna be needed even then. So overall, I think it comes down to the money, and yeah. So in a way, I'm fairly sure Kim is having a crisis, like how to get out of this, because, yeah, the volunteers, as hardworking as they have been, they didn't meet up the expectations. There hasn't really been the quote-unquote savior for the game. Like, Yeah. There's just been so much stuff. And they are more or less running out of options. He has been here, but he left the box behind. Why? It looks like he's taken all the other boxes. Just the one that he's missing. But yeah, I'm a bit all over the place with my theory, but I think that's what's going on. Again, it's just speculations, and that's why we don't have anything like, I mean, none of it is true until proven otherwise, but you get the idea. It's more or less a crisis how to get there. What are the realistic options right now for the game? And I think the drastic measures are more or less the only option at this point anymore. It's more or less do or die situation. Then again, it kinda has been like that for the entire lifespan of the game, but now we are like talking about the I'm not even sure if I'm making any sense, but let's hope someone gets something out of that, eh? And yeah, just remember guys, Kim has a family too, which, you know, puts a pressure. He still needs to, no matter how the dream game, he still has a family to take care of. So he is but a human, no matter how much charm he has got. But yeah. So mostly the silence is because they are. He wants to come up with the solution that, or he wants to figure all of this out. Kim, that is. He wants to figure out what to do in a way that keeps everyone happy, in a way. Although, I think, well, that hasn't really been possible in making everybody happy, but he's doing, I think that's what he's trying to, like, trying to keep the people happy, the players happy, while also figuring out the future for this game.
Alert. Wetlands. Drop grade. ETA 60 seconds.
Wetlands. I am nearby. And, well, because of my speculation here is also why I haven't actually been pestering Kim directly, because, well, if this theory holds any water at all, you know, well, I wouldn't get any results, I wouldn't really get any answers, and I would be just not exactly making the situation any easier. I would be putting extra pressure on him that he, he already knows, and so he doesn't need people to tell him. More people to tell him about the stuff. Hello there, Just Master.
Lunar alignment initiated.
Well, to put it bluntly, you can't miss what there is not. But you'll get to hear my theory on the WOD of why there is no news. So yeah, I don't know if people liked my theory at all. Feel free to disagree, agree, or put down whatever. If you have another one, feel free to type it down to the comment section. I'd love to give it a read. Remember, play the argument, not the man. It is fine to disagree. Now the question is, where is Mac? It sounds like he's aligning the satellites, but... Oh. Well, it's not only Patreon armor, it should be pointed out. You're referring to the last week's thingy. It also included two other armor sets. I have a feeling Coral was way too well knew what direction I was coming from, but thank you for the point anyway. So it wouldn't be just a Patreon armor. There would be one for the regular people. There would be a spearhead armor, and then there would be a Patreon armor. Because if you suddenly introduce just a Patreon armor, that would piss people off. So in order to make that Patreon armor reality, you gotta create two other sets too. One for the regular game owners, one for the spearheads, and then one for the Patreon. So technically speaking, you can own 3 different armors, and you'll have incentive to buy a different version of the game. You don't need them, but if you want to get all 3, you're gonna get the Spearhead Edition and the Patreon. The thing about the Patreon, however, is that if it was something like you pay each month, it would be marketable, so people are essentially investing on that armor. So it would become available at some period of time. And, if it's a good armor and people want it, it will be growing interest, just like the PlayerUnknown's set. And, yeah. That's the idea behind the Patreon armor. Amongst the other things, it would be just one of many different rewards. Mostly inspired by the Kickstarter. Mostly inspired by the Kickstarter rewards that were there. Now, where do I want to go? I think there was something about jungle getting a crate next. I could be wrong. But now that it is a subject of discussion, for anyone who hasn't seen my long-ass post off the Patreon,
Jungle. Drop crate. ETA 60 seconds.
like, so far I have shot down every single Patreon idea. Well, first of all, most of them have been basically just saying ZBS or Kim should get a Patreon account up and running to fund the game. That's basically the gist of the idea. Nothing to it. Like, it's just an idea. Put it out. Make it happen. Now, especially those, it's instant shot. That's not even worth of discussion. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work out. But after shooting down so many ideas, I figured, you know what? after watching a YouTuber, I figured I sort of imitated him with the whole a bit when I started writing the thing. But it gave me thought that, you know what, maybe once I could make like a actual idea that I would see, how I would see the Patreon working. So instead of just shooting every single idea down, I would make one that might function in my book. And it more or less, you know, I could actually try to find that post now that I think about it and just read it. But basic gist of it is that, you know, why people go to Patreon, begin with, and what they expect from there. So, what, like, you gotta have a reason for people to back up something in Patreon, and they have expectations of getting something in return for supporting in Patreon. And just putting the game up there for, like, putting the Interstellar Marines in the Patreon for the love of the game is not going to be that reason. There might be few, but realistically speaking... Oh. This is a chance. So, we already have some ideas, like, as a quote-unquote rewards for the Patreon in form of what we had on Kickstarter. However, I would argue that the main reason why the Kickstarter failed was the rewards were kind of meh. Like 150 euros or dollars for the super, like, you would get a helmet as a super backer at 150 euros or dollars. I can't remember which.
Access to suborbital docking bay initiated.
And I actually backed up for that tier. Of course, the Kickstarter failed, so I didn't lose any money. That's something that a lot of people don't seem to figure out, that, oh, the Kickstarter failed. What about the money? Well, they didn't get any money. And nobody lost any. But yeah, $150 less euros for a helmet that barely looks any different from the regular helmet is just not gonna make people back for the thing. Not saying it should be dirt cheap, but 150 is way too much just for the helmet. But with something like maybe, I don't know. Well, that was just to give some ideas what happened wrong in the past, etc. But taking those rewards and making them into Patreon ones would work, because they were not bad rewards, it's just the pricing for them was kind of awful. So you would still have the whole in-game shrines and the bullseye markers and all that for different tiers, including the armor. Of course, some of them would be only one-time Patreon thing, while the others would be, like the armor, for instance, maybe make it marketable so people have reason to keep, you know, having that high pledge on the Patreon. There would be some that would be similar to, what do you call it, you know, just give them reason to go.
Drop crate.
So let's see, where is that? South. So over here. So, like, you would have incentives to give people, like, you know, get extra high tier for once, just to get that reward, and then go back to the lower one. Like, that's fine, they are still backing it, but they decided to go the extra mile to get that small reward. Not only they are supporting the game, and they are getting rewarded for it. It's an incentive to pledge. And that's what really all of these ideas that people are coming up with are lacking. There's no incentives whatsoever. Well, to quickly answer your question, Jazz, it's not too late. It is never too late. It's just the game currently doesn't have. The game currently isn't at the stage where it would be possible to make that audience. The potential is there, but it's not there at the current time. Like, there needs to be something done. Etc. So, using the Kickstarter rewards for what do you call it? As incentives with lowered prices, more realistic. After all, these are monthly things and all that jazz. Would probably be much more successful than putting out just for the love of the game, you know. People are much more willing to put money down when they're actually getting something in return. But even then, the game still needs some content, okay? Well, to, you know, make sure that the people actually pledge means that their rewards is not something that might happen in the future, but something they get instantly. That is why the whole idea of the Patreon armor only works if the Patreon armor is in the game. Like, the whole idea fails if it's like, alright, well, once the game is done or once the armor is done, you'll get it. No. The rewards need to be some, maybe with the bullseye and the shrine. It can be, you know, those might be something later on. But the armor and something like that, there needs to be something like, alright, the proof, like, that you can actually make up for a claim. It's like, the armor would be one. So, having multiple sets of armors is like, alright, you pledged, here's your reward, and now you have it in-game too. That creates a trust between the player who's pledging and the developer. Basically, just proving that we deliver. We are not just kidding around. You paid for it, therefore you get it. No, that's not gonna work. Jazz, you can't use the concept. You need to make the armor happen. If you're gonna go with this idea, no concept, none of it. There's... The goodwill of a people is no longer there. You gotta, you know, deliver. No more promises, you need to deliver. And that's with the Patreon too. If you go that way, you gotta deliver. You gotta do the patches, you gotta do the stuff. You know. Like, if you go Patreon, it's no... You gotta put your mouth where the money is and start doing stuff. Otherwise, people are not gonna join the Patreon. And the likelihood is that you're gonna have to do it before the Patreon starts picking up. So technically speaking, you'll be doing it for free. Until people actually start trusting you and putting their money in the Patreon. Like, alright, you know, it's actually something like... They're putting up the updates and they have had that armor. And I have seen 1 or 2 guys already with that suit. So, something is actually happening. I guess I will go ahead and support this, after all. And there you have it. That is more or less the gist of my Patreon idea. It's not a simply get a Patreon. It is actually something like, what do you need to do, how to keep it going, and etc. And also the whole... well, you know, once people get the armor once, they don't need to get that again. And that's fine. But that's where the whole making the Patreon armor marketable comes in. Like, there would be no cash, there would be no microtransactions on the game It would be simply a DLC, technically. Patreon DLC that is marketable between players. Like, there's nothing in the game that you can actually buy or anything. There's no shop, nothing. Not only that creates the whole invest, as I said, because there are only limited amount of those armor sets, because it's gonna go away after some point. That's the whole idea of making it marketable. So, it's a limited armor section, and that sounds like another player. Yep. I'm gonna be a cheeky briggy. So, yeah. That would also be another source of bring some small extra income once people start selling those Patreon armors for money. The ZBS is gonna get a portion out of that, if I understood Steam market correctly. So, players who bought those are making money out of their interest, while also the people who, well, ZBS is getting money and all that. Basically, everyone's happy except the people who think it's a cash shop and all that jazz. Well, Jazz, if you've been listening, I've been telling you the only way I see the Patreon working for ZBS. It's not gonna work as a for the love of the game, but it will work as it would work if there's incentives for people to go with. And, well, going on stuff with the keep the people posted, keep updates coming to give people reason to actually believe in your cause. Like, it's no longer like the promises and talks no longer work, because you gotta start talking and not talking, fucking working. Well, whoever that is, he is persistent. I don't really need to hide my presence here, so...
Alert. Lunar. Drop crate. ETA 60 seconds.
Well, I know, he could have died there. So based on the way using the update expect... It's too early to say. It's just there. I know that some of the volunteers are doing something, but that's all on that. I know nothing else. But yeah, that's a gist of my whole Patreon idea. If you go to Discord and search TMS Patreon, I think you will find it in the ITO channels. I could be wrong, but just searching the user TMS with the keyword Patreon, it's a wall of text. It's composed of 2 long ass messages. So if you want to read the whole thing, head over to the yeah. Head over to the Interstellar Marines Discord. So you can read the whole thing in detail and not just hear me ramble about it. Ooh, shiny. Too bad it's not gonna last. In 3, 2, 1. Subarctic. The points have been already taken. Oh, no, they aren't. He died to what now? A CTR. Alright, I'll go ahead and get that then. And that's more or less all the ideas that I had for this week's live stream. I'm sort of out of the ideas. I don't really have anything to rant, aside from the fact it is fucking hot outside. And therefore it's hot inside. Where the fuck? Like, it's not even June yet, and it's already disgustingly hot. And people are already at the beach. I work next to the beach, so... yeah. I thought that was a barrel. Fucking hell. And I figured tomorrow after the work we would go play some beach volleyball with my friends. So far looks good, and yeah. What's the one thing what's the one thing you wish that could be added to into the game? I think just one thing. That is way too narrow. Because the whole concept of the Interstellar Marine is composed of small things that work together. And if some of those are missing, it's not the real Interstellar Marines. So, if somebody thinking, well, you'd want the shark, right? Wrong! I do not want the shark because it's just one piece of the many things. The shark added to the game right now isn't gonna do jack shit. That's gonna be disappointing as hell. I don't think I've been on that tower in the subarctic. Multiple things then, the whole package. Simple as that. But in a way, like rather bit. Mountains is as far away from me as possible. So fuck it. I'm gonna cheat a bit with my answer and say that the one thing I'd like is the Unreal Engine demo. Made public or remade. Ideally, the bullseye and the running man with the original physics would be great. Or bullseye as a whole, in general, it was surprisingly fun target practice. Like, it had surprising amount of depth into it. Like, the whole gun mechanics were pretty good, and simply all the challenges were really good. Nothing got like go 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 on expert. Holy shit! Like, what is Bullseye or what is Running Man? Well, they are the prototypes. Back in the website days, when Interstellar Marines was just on the website, it had prototype parts for people to play on. The first one was a vault, which was just a showcase room, with really nothing special to it. It had the models, like the marine models fighting the land sharks, and there was a Titan Walker model, and it had some. It was a small showcase room that you could walk around. Then the second playable prototype was the Bullseye. It was just, you couldn't move, but you could move your mouse. You were stationary, firing at these cardboard targets that can be found in the tutorial. When you first pick up the gun, and you gotta shoot at the cardboard targets. Essentially those, but they had way better physics where they would actually... They had proper physics where you could shoot holes into them and chop off the heads and all that. And they also had specific markers that you'd hit on, and which made really satisfying... they made satisfying sound when you hit them. And there were also bullseye markers, which I don't think... well, you can find a bullseye marker on the... on the Easter egg in the target practice thing. If you go around the corner, you will find a bullseye marker that is unattached. And the bullseye markers would give you a lot of points, but they would be really hard to spot, and they would only appear very briefly. So you would you could hit the entire insanely small center area for, I think, 5,000 points, or you could hit the edge area for less amount of points. So it had 2 spots to hit. And, yeah, each level had those things, and they would... some of them appeared right in front of your face, others you'd have to... Others you'd have to keep your eye on. Like, some of them might be somewhere just faintly visible on the background or something like that. One would be hanging off the roof, etc. And the gun physics on the SMG were nice. You could play with... You could swap the sights. You could take off the silencer, put on the silencer, and all that jazz. Some of the... You would just... It was simply getting as many points as you could. You would get minus score if you hit the civilian targets. And yeah. There were a whole bunch of different cardboard targets. Like, some of them were snipers that would be like, quote-unquote, lying down. Like the silhouette of a sniper, and it was camouflage against a background somewhere in the distance. You would need a scope for it to actually see it. It might sound boring, but it was actually surprisingly fun. Especially if you're into whole getting as high score as possible. And some of the challenges were easy as hell. The others, like I said, go on expert is probably gonna get Vietnam flashbacks for some of the people who actually played that thing, because it was there were 2. One of them was go, and I can't remember the other one, but they were like 2 that were particularly hard, especially to get the 5-star rating on it. I think some people tried to make it a mobile game, but I don't remember what happened with that. I think they gave up on the idea. Maybe Kevin was one of the people working on it, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Either way, the next prototype after the Bullseye was Running Man. And Running Man essentially is what it sounds like. You would actually move around. Well, in a way, it was the first, like, actual tutorial session, in a way. You would have CTRs. Believe it or not, there were 4 different CTRs, although the current CTR in this game is kind of a mix of the two. Like, there was a sprinter, and there was a... Basically, the current CTRs, the way they look, that would be one of the basic CTR. It would just walk towards you and nothing else like that. Then there was a yellow one that would sprint at you with the... Well, basically the defected CTR. Then there was a third one that would self-destruct upon getting close enough. So essentially a suicide bomber. And the last but not least was essentially a juggernaut. It was a taller CTR with a lot of health. And yeah, you could jump, you could crouch, you could do all that jazz. Well, I'm not actually sure about the crouch, but you could jump, etc. And the CTRs actually had pretty good physics. I mean, when you shot at the arm came off. When you shot at the head came off, and the legs flew off, and all that. Like, they would actually register on, like, the CTRs do lose limbs and heads in this version of the game too, but it's nowhere near the same simulation as it used to be in the Running Man. Now, on its own, that sounds like, sure, whatever. Nothing special. But then, as you go on the levels, it ramps up the difficulty by adding an armor plating to the CTRs. And I think there's somewhere, like, you could actually see a different variant of the armor on the CTR somewhere. I can't remember where it is right now, but basically assault rifle protection or SMG protection, you know, essentially plates on them. And when you shot at the plates, the head was covered, the torso was... I think it started with just the torso covered, and eventually it would be head heavily covered, and the torso and all the bits. And you would have to shoot off all of that armor before you actually get to kill the thing. And if I remember correctly, the self-destructing CTR had a weak spot in the chest. If you shot it into the middle of the chest, it would blow up and damaging the other CTRs around it. So rather than shooting in the head and making it normal kill, you could just shoot in the chest and make it blow up for collateral damage. And that's more or less the gist of Running Man. It wasn't anything that special in the end, but the CTRs were, well, I wouldn't say they were that much smarter. They were all melee bots. But yeah, I think there also has been some talk of making some of those CTRs return. After all, they're like... I think there are like 6 different types of CTRs in a sense. One of them is what we are facing right now. Then there are the 3 other types: the self-destruction, the juggernaut, and the I suppose the sprinter counts at 1. Then we have the rent-a-bot that we see in Star Crown. You know, basically rented CTRs and all that jazz. Like, granted, it's the same thing, but it still, technically speaking, counts as a different CTR. So there are whole line of production line of different CTRs, in lack of better terms. Like, whole bunch of variants, each with a different task in mind. And so, who knows, maybe we'll see. Well, with the skin customization, we sort of saw that return, but it's only a matter of time. Well, it's more or less needs a better AI, but something like seeing a CTR medic or really anything of that sort, it's sort of a matter of time. It's not currently possible, but yeah. Medicabot. Medabot. Just taking pot shots at it. Someone was next to me just a second ago, but they went away. I want to go down the stairs and get stuck on something. If I was a sniper, I would be hiding up there, and that's probably something Joe would do. Very strange indeed. I think that CDR might be looking for me. Well, fuck it. If I'm gonna get shot, I might as well get shot. The game is about to end anyway, so Leroy, smell kings. Smelly King. I still don't trust any of this stuff. Ah, that's a weapon crate. Boo. Ooh, that's ammo crate. I want more points. I need points. Points.
Subarctic. Drop crate. ETA 60 seconds.
Well, the game is about to end. Let's see if I can find some more or lose it to a CTR at the last possible second. Fuck, that has been opened. There should be some points in here. Nope. Well.
Congratulations, candidate. Combat points are saved to your records.
I hope you guys enjoyed this week's Wargames tutorial Thursday. I've been your host, your favorite Finn, and hopefully next week we'll get some news and all that jazz. Who knows, maybe we'll create discussion, and as a result it will get, end this charade of radio silence and all that. Until next week, guys. See ya.